From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for another Thunder Thursday. The offseason is upon us, but lots to talk about, including some breaking news. Let me introduce our Thunder coverage team. I'm joined by Barry Trammell, columnist, and Eric Horn, Thunder beat writer. I believe Brett Dawson, our other Thunder beat writer, off on some time away. But guys, as I mentioned, breaking news, and Eric, you're all over this, finding out that assistant Maurice Cheeks is in the hospital in Philadelphia. What do we know right now about his situation?
Well, not a ton. That he's doing fine. He was basically on a flight to Philadelphia. It's not clear where he was coming from. He could have been coming from here, could have been coming from anywhere. But basically, the Thunder's aware of his condition. He was in a Philadelphia area hospital getting tests for whatever happened on this flight, and that he is doing well at the time. Cheeks had a hip. He had a hip surgery last year during the season that forced him to miss about a month of time. He had to step away from the team. He's 60 years old. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from here on out in terms of the Thunder assistant position. Yeah. He's expected to come back to staff next season. He was on the entire staff this year. And, the Thunder already has to replace one assistant after Anthony Grant left to go to Dayton. So it's going to be interesting to see what Maurice Cheeks' role is going to be going forward.
Yeah, and obviously, Barry, we know that Maurice Cheeks is a guy that has worked a ton with Russell Westbrook, as sort of his guy, if you will, on the coaching staff, and Anthony Grant being a guy that I know worked with guards too. I mean, that position, which is obviously important to this franchise because Russell Westbrook's important, you got to have the right guys in those spots.
Yeah, and Cheeks is obviously a guy that matters to the Thunder because he left and they brought him back. A lot of times when a guy leaves, doesn't really necessarily come back. So I think Mo is very highly valued in the Thunder hierarchy, and hopefully everything's okay with him.
Eric, any idea? You mentioned Anthony Grant's departure. Have we heard anything on who might take that spot? Is that something we expect to hear about in coming weeks here?
Nothing as of yet. It was something that went a little deeper into the summer last time around when we got news of Adrian Griffin coming on the Thunder staff. It could be a situation where they promote from within. Mark Daigneault has been a guy that the Oklahoma City Blue coach is coming off a successful season with them, leading them to the D-League Finals. He was a guy that was he was in the running or not in the running rather, but he's been a guy that they've promoted and had on the bench at times when there's been an assistant step away. He was on the bench last year when Cheeks went out with his hip surgery. So that's a guy you could look at. And then, there were some guys who we expected to maybe be on the market who weren't going to be on the market. And the Thunder could be looking at some people who are coming out of this series with Golden State and in Cleveland as maybe some potential candidates as well.
Well, you mentioned that series. Now all the talk in the NBA world, I mentioned being the offseason a little bit ago, but obviously we're not to that point for all the teams yet, as we now have round 3 between the Warriors and the Cavs. We talked a little bit about this series last time we were here on Thunder Thursday, but let's talk about now that it's upon us. They play tonight, Game 1 in Oakland. Barry, who wins Game 1?
Well, I think I'm bound to take Golden State since I think they're going to win all the games. I picked a sweep. So, I think these are two fantastically competitive, fantastically high-achieving, high-playing teams that are very even. And then the Golden State Warriors added Kevin Durant. So I don't think they're quite as close as we think they are. LeBron James is fantastic. What he's done is historic. He's an epic player. But he's going up against an epic collection of talent.
Yeah. Eric, a week ago when Barry picked the sweep for this series, you said you thought that the Cavs would win a lengthy series. I think you said 7 games, although maybe 6 winning on Ohio soil, if you will. Are you sticking with that? And who you got winning Game 1?
I might be waffling a little, but I'm not going as extreme as Barry is. I think Warriors in 6 would be more appropriate in this instance. I really have thought about it in the past week or so. It's going to be really difficult for the Cavaliers to go and win a Game 7 in Golden State like they did last year, and even that took some crazy circumstances. Draymond Green getting suspended for that Game 5 in which the Cavaliers won on the road. So it's going to be really tough for the Cavaliers to win enough road games to win this series the way that Golden State's playing, not to mention they have Kevin Durant. But again, I think the Cavs are going to make this a series. I don't think it's going to be a 4-game series. I think that they have a chance in Game 1. We saw Golden State come out rusty against the Spurs after having a long layoff in that first game one, and then Kawhi Leonard got hurt, and then the series was essentially over from there. So the Cavs do have an opportunity. We saw the Thunder go into Golden State last year and get an upset in a game one situation on the road. And then again, they had Kevin Durant back then. But different circumstances. I think the Cavs do have an opportunity in game one to make a statement, and it would be nice if they could, because then it would be a really compelling series from there.
10 days of layoff for the Warriors, 7 for the Cavs. This has been a long time since either of these teams have played basketball. But I'm wondering, Barry, we were talking about this actually before we came into the studio. Is there too much value being placed on these last games we saw the Warriors play? As Eric mentioned, once the Spurs lost Kawhi Leonard and we're already without Tony Parker, that's maybe a Spurs team that the Thunder could have beaten in a series if they really would have got going. I mean, they were no match for the Warriors. Are we putting too much stock in that when we're valuing how good the Warriors are right now?
I don't know if other people are. I didn't put any stock in it, because what you said is right. The Spurs were a shell of themselves. But the Warriors just systematically took out Utah, which is a very good team and a tough team to play against. Utah, plays defense, controls the ball, and yet Golden State was never pushed. And the truth is, the Warriors won 67 games. That's with Durant missing 2 months. That's with learning to play together for the first month. This is an historically great team, and there's just not anybody in the league that can match them. The only people that can come close are the Cavaliers. So it'll be interesting. It'll be competitive. I think Cleveland will put up a great fight. I don't think you'll see many, if any, blowouts. I just don't see how after 48 minutes where anybody's going to be able to guard the Warriors to any great extent.
All right, so we've talked about Kevin Durant, we've talked about LeBron James, and talking about this series, those are obviously the two big stars. I mean, in a series with a ton of stars, in a series with 7 All-Stars, I mean, almost unheard of, those two guys become the bright, shining lights. Who's got more on the line, Eric?
I thought it was Kevin Durant at first, but the way that everybody's been talking about this, LeBron James, Michael Jordan comparison, I think from a historical standpoint, LeBron James actually may have more on the line in this series. Even if Kevin Durant loses this series and Golden State loses this series, we're going to talk about how, Kevin Durant was the reason that the Warriors lost this series, or we're going to try and heap blame on Kevin Durant because they got this far and happened to lose. But Kevin Durant's going to have another opportunity to come back and win 3 or 4 championships with the Warriors. I don't think there's as much on the line for him personally, because I think he's going to have multiple opportunities to do this. The way that the league is stacked and the way that this team is stacked, they're going to be a dominant team for as long as they want it to be, because, apparently Kevin Durant's going to be taking less money, as we'll talk about. So they're going to be able to fit.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Eric.
Sorry. They're going to be able to fit some of these bit part players, like, not bit part players, but guys that are key contributors like Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston into the cap. It's going to make this team a dominant force for years to come. So I don't know if as much pressure is on Kevin Durant necessarily as there was in the beginning or there is now. I think from a historical standpoint, the LeBron, Michael, Jordan argument has become even more loud since the playoffs has gone on. And LeBron's got a lot on stake here. If he wins this, there's going to be a strong argument that he's the best player in NBA history.
Barry, you buying that argument?
Half.
Probably not.
Kevin Durant, in this series, Kevin Durant has the most to lose. LeBron James has the most to gain.
Okay.
If the Warriors win, which they're going to win, but when Golden State wins, there's not going to be a lot of laurel wreaths for Kevin Durant. There's going to be a lot of, he got one. It's why he went there, so he got one. Good for him. If he loses, the whole basketball world will sort of shake their head and say, this guy is either cursed or foolish or whatever the moniker may be. If Cleveland loses, nobody's going to blame LeBron. Nobody's going to say the guy's a loser. We know completely different. If he wins, it's like Eric the Red said, all-time greatest, epic, Michael Jordan-esque. So lots for on the line to gain for LeBron James, lots to lose for Kevin Durant.
I go back to something I thought about yesterday as I was sifting through the reaction to the unfortunate racial slurs that were left on LeBron James' house in L.A., and it sort of struck me once again how roles have shifted. LeBron was always the bad guy in Miami, and now you know, not because of what happened to his home, but just all things I think have come around to pointing to him as, you know, a lot of people saying, gosh, I hope LeBron and the Cavs can beat Durant and the Warriors, and who would have ever thought we'd be to that point? But I think that is a lot of the narrative of this series, guys. A lot of people are going to be pulling for LeBron James, something that 3 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody was doing in the NBA world. It's crazy how that narrative has really changed.
2012 NBA Finals, LeBron versus Durant.
Yep.
Durant was he was the good guy. He wore the white hat. LeBron wore the black hat. It's completely reversed now, and you know, LeBron's career is interesting. He was the hero and the guy everybody cheered for when he was in Cleveland, because, you know, didn't have a lot to go with him. He willed that team to the finals in 2007 and kept challenging in the subsequent years. Then he became the villain in Miami. Now it's come back full circle.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Well, does this add to that narrative, guys? What Eric mentioned earlier, the fact that now we're hearing reports from Kevin Durant that he's going to be willing to take less than the max when it comes to contract negotiations to help Golden State keep some of these other guys on the roster to have manageable salaries. How does this alter Durant? How does this alter the Warriors, the league? Eric, what's the ramifications of all of this?
Well, the idea of Kevin Durant taking less money is really a notion of him just remaining put. It's not necessarily him taking less money. From the way I understand it is, he signed on for 2 years. The second year is a player option. If he simply just opts into this year instead of opting out and renegotiating his contract and receiving a bigger piece of the pie, he's essentially putting money back on the table to re-sign guys like Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, guys that have meant a lot to this Warriors team as they've gone on to this record, the record season last year and the great season they've had this year. And then, you know, just taking the opt-in option that he has now to take the money that he was signed up for, it'll allow for the Warriors to go and re-sign Steph Curry to however much money they want to re-sign Steph Curry to, because he's a homegrown guy. They can re-sign him, go over the cap with the bird rights. It really allows for more wiggle room. You know, they might have had to give up Iguodala and Livingston, guys that are free agents that were going to be or they would have had to renounce Andre Iguodala because he was going to be making, you know, in upwards of $10 to $11 million this year. So it really just gives him an opportunity to bring those guys back and keep the band together. And it's got to be pretty demoralizing for the rest of the league to understand that they're going to be able to keep that core together, where you thought, you know, maybe Livingston would go somewhere else, maybe Iguodala would go elsewhere. And Iguodala is so key to their best lineups.
Well, and Barry, I think that seems to really sort of hit at it. Is this signaling to the rest of the league that this is a group that's going to be a force to be reckoned with, not just now, but for maybe a long time to come?
Well, yes, and no, frankly, there's never been a reason to this point to think they were going to break up. I mean, there was no reason to think Klay Thompson or Draymond Green or Curry or Durant, any of them, was going to go anywhere else. Now, if Andre Iguodala leaves, that would hurt the Warriors. If Sean Livingston left, that would hurt the Warriors. In a really good NBA Finals against the Cavs, they'd probably only win in 5 games. So let's not overstate, you know, the importance. As long as they've got those 4 guys together, that's the demoralizing part. So I think it's just completely special that Kevin Durant's going to sacrifice some money to stay in Oakland after through sort of auxiliary channels criticizing Sam Presti's team building over the last few years. So I think that's really cool of Kevin. So happy 2019 NBA title, Golden State. Everybody's fired up.
What was it that Russell Westbrook said? That's cute. Is
That's
that
cute.
the
That's
line?
cute.
That's cute, Kevin. That's cute.
What it really comes down to is that the Warriors have had a really fortuitous set of circumstances that have allowed for this thing to happen. You know, being able to sign Klay and Draymond before the big cap spike happened, going from $70 million to $94 million in one off season, that opened up the door to be able to fit Kevin Durant into the cap. But it doesn't happen unless you've got Draymond and Klay Thompson signing before the cap spike, and you've also got Steph Curry having those funky ankles to where he's got a below market deal now where he's only making $11 or $12 million, and he's already won 2 MVPs on it.
Right. Lots of stuff working in the Warriors' favor. All right. Speaking of players and their contracts, players are opting out. This has sort of become a thing. I don't know if I want to call it a trend yet, but we're seeing some guys opt out. C.J. Miles, then Gallinari, Rudy Gay. I mean, these are guys that the Thunder have been mentioned with as possible targets of bringing these guys in before. Eric, does this alter anything in your mind for the Thunder as they look at potential offseason moves?
You know, I even thought that even a guy like a Sean Livingston would be an option, but I mean, with the way that Golden State is or Kevin Durant's making these quote-unquote sacrifices, he'll be able to come back and they can just redo their whole thing all over again. C.J. Miles is an intriguing guy. He made probably less than $5 million last year. I mean, if the Thunder was able to use that top-tier mid-level exception, that would be around $8 million. That would be an upgrade for C.J. Miles' pocketbook, and it would be an upgrade for the Thunder's bench, frankly, because C.J. Miles is a quality NBA player, and he has been for the past 10 years. I think that Gallinari and Rudy Gay are going to be a little bit out of the Thunder's price range when it comes to free agency. That's the reason that Rudy Gay opted out of his deal. There's no way he's going to be making mid-level exception money, especially because he opted out of making potentially $13 or $14 million this upcoming year. He could have came back to Sacramento and made that much money. Is he willing to take that much of a discount just to get to a winner? Probably not.
Are any of those guys interesting enough in your mind, Barry, that the Thunder might make a move even at a higher price for some of those guys?
Well, I don't know. The Thunder is so hamstrung on the cap that they really can't go after a free agent that's in the above $10 million. The mid-level exception, if it is at 8, which is what it will be if they're not over the cap, then they would have a shot maybe at somebody like C.J. Miles. But the truth is, they're not going to get a difference maker. They're not going to get an elite free agent this season. It's just not going to happen. So I think we have to look towards journeyman, or we have to look towards trade in terms of new blood coming into the Thunder, and of course the draft. So
yeah.
The free agents, it's difficult. Historically, it's been hard to get free agents to come to Oklahoma City and other places, Salt Lake, Orlando, places like that. So it's tough to get them here, and it's tough now to fit them in the cap. That window is very narrow this summer.
Typically, the teams with the cap space are the ones that aren't very good. You're spending money if you're going to be a contender most of the time. Even the teams that have cap space currently, they're going to have to re-sign guys that help them be successful in the playoffs. For instance, like a Washington with a guy like Otto Porter. He's a restricted free agent. They're going to throw all the money they can at him so that they don't have to match somebody in free agency. A team like Milwaukee that's going to have to bring back a Tony Snell who's a versatile defender and can hit threes. The teams that were in the playoffs that are under the cap, they're still going to be cap strung by the time free agency comes around because they're going to have to retain the guys that helped them get to where they were.
All right, guys. June is just beginning. That means the draft will be here before we know it. We'll have lots more to talk about with the Thunder. We'll obviously continue to update the situation with assistant coach Maurice Cheeks, so you can check that out on newsok.com and in the Oklahoman. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.